The history of now really is about life. It's about human behavior. That's really what it is in its essence. And I guess if you ask anyone what life is, the answer is going to be based on their perception, their experience.
Hello, this is Andrea from OurDayDream, and today I'm introducing to you Jayson Bartlett. He is a writer and director of the Broadway Set History of Now. So without further ado, here is Jayson. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing? Nice to meet you.
Good, nice to meet you. So I'm always fascinated with people that were born outside of the country that make their way. And so it's like there's a lot of people from my area that haven't even made it 5 hours to the beach because of their limited beliefs. So how do you get from England to America?
Actually, I met someone through work, through networking. And yeah, we kind of hit it off, and you get to that point where it's like, well, are we going to meet?
Yeah.
So I came over, and her name was Melanie, and she works in the industry, and we worked together, and we became engaged. And she was a big influence on this project, and a big influence on me. And then unfortunately 3 years ago, Melanie passed away. So, she made me promise that I would carry on with this project, the history of now. And that's what I'm doing. So
That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's how I came to be in America. Yeah. So.
That is so cool because, yeah, what a huge leap you took. And then now it's a part of the project that you're doing too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's in life, you have these connections. People often think that we're in control of our lives, but you never really are. You never really are, because you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's going to happen, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So for me, it was an amazing connection, and one that really changed my life in so many different ways. But obviously from a work perspective, because she was just amazing. I mean, it's, I'm a writer, I'm a director, but Melanie was an artist. She was a singer, she was a writer, she just was incredible. So I learned a lot from her. So yeah, she would love this tonight. So, she'll be watching this and going, yeah, he's doing okay. So,
That's awesome. So did you write and direct in England too?
Yeah, I was a writer and director. I mean, I never wanted to direct. That was something I never wanted to do. And again, I talk about these connections, these kind of consequences of other people's actions. And I'd written a play, and I brought a director in. And then about 24 hours before we started our first rehearsal, and to this day I still don't know, he just said, I'm not doing it. I'm pulling out. I can't do it. I've got too much on. And it was like, wow. So I phoned a few people and said, look, we need a director. We need to get them in. It wasn't ideal because a director needs time to look at the script and get an idea and sort of create his philosophy moving forward as part of the process. And one of the actors just said, look, just do it. Just come in and direct it for a couple of nights and then start to look for someone. So that's what it was. So I came in and sort of said to the cast, look, it's not an ideal situation, but I'm going to direct tonight, and then we'll look for a director. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then a couple of the actors afterwards sort of said to me, you're really good at this. You're a great communicator, and you're interesting, and all these kind of things. And I kind of thought, I'm not sure, but yeah. And now I direct, and I love it. I love working with actors. Absolutely love it. Yeah, it's part of the process. So to write something and then to sort of be part of that journey afterwards, because usually you write and then that's it. Your job is done. But to be a writer, then to direct, it's great because you're on the full journey. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like pertaining to too how you said like going with the flow. Not really, you know what I mean? Just stepping up and in where life is actually taking you and just grabbing a hold of it.
Yeah, sometimes, sometimes they're the best time, they're the best opportunities, when you're not looking for something or you're not thinking and then it just presents. For me, I would never, I can honestly tell you that I would never have chosen to be a director. It just wasn't in my mindset, but then, like I said, you get this opportunity, and what do? Do you sit down and feel sorry for yourself, or do you just go, do you know what, I'm going to get on with this and see how it goes? And look, it could have gone horribly wrong, and if it had, I would have just said, look, I've tried, but actually this isn't within my skill set, and bring someone in. But as it turned out, I loved it. As I say, I sort of working with actors, as I say, building characters, developing characters that you've written and created, and then you get to see these characters flesh out, and then you see these interactions and relationships between the actors and the individual scenes, and you see it all the way through, and then you put it in front of an audience. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, and then that's your, it come from your creative mind. So
yeah. I mean, the great thing about it is you don't have anyone else to blame.
Yeah.
You wrote it, you directed it, so but no, it's fantastic. And the biggest thing is, Andrea, is that you get to work with some incredible people, some really talented people, because it's not just about the writer and the director and even the actors, but you've got the technical crew, you've got the guys that do the sound and the lighting, and even those that work in the theatre that do those jobs that are invisible, preparing the theatre, making sure it's clean and it's safe. Those working the booking, I think it's a huge project. So it's a nice experience being part of that. So
awesome. So tell us a little bit about tell us about History of Now.
That's a really interesting question, actually, because this is the first interview now. This is it. We're now launching. So thank you for this. Thank you for inviting me on. The History of Now really is about life. It's about human behavior. That's really what it is in its essence. And I guess if you ask anyone what life is, the answer is going to be based on their perception, their experience. And that's what we've tried to kind of encompass with the History of Now. So we take it back to 1823, right the way up to present day. And we look at those threads, those correlations between the past and the present. One of the things that I've learned recently, in fact, if we'd had this interview a year ago and you'd have said to me about history repeating itself, I would have said absolutely. But I don't think it is. And I think what I've realized recently, it's not history that repeats itself, it's human behavior. And so what we've done is we've set this story up, and it's based on fact. I mean, everything in it has happened, okay? But we kind of have this bookend character. So we have this young girl, Christina Hauptmann, sort of coming up to 14 years of age in Berlin, in Germany, during the rise of the Nazi party. And then we see her as this 95, 96-year-old woman who's looking back on her life. So it's a really interesting situation. You've got these bookends, and then their life in between, their experiences. And then we bounce that off, which is what's going on now. Everything that's going in the world. You only have to look back these last few days to what happened in Texas.
Yeah.
Shooting. I mean, it's just crazy. And, so that's what the play is about, but it's not, look, there are moments in that are going to be very difficult and very hard, and I don't apologize for that. But there are some wonderful, warm moments in there that really express just how wonderful life is. Even at its very worst, it's still an amazing gift. And I think one of the things that worries me is that we're losing that. We're forgetting just how much of a gift it is, because I think we're constantly now bombarded with negativity. We've all come through this 2.5 years of COVID. The economy now, that there's so many negatives at the moment. And there doesn't seem to be a really clear kind of leadership from anywhere. They just seem to be they're interested in just attacking each other and trying to score points.
Right.
And they don't realize that they're to represent everyone. And it's not just about their power, their ego game, but there's people that are really saying, look, what's going on here? You know, there's people that have lost their jobs, their families, you know, they're under pressure and they need this guidance. They need everyone to come together and just say, okay, let's just stop the backbiting, stop the pressure. And then who knows, but yeah, so that's really what the history of now is about. Okay, so it's really taking the past and the present and just saying, all right, are there correlations, are there threads that connect? And if there are, what can we do? How do we learn? Okay, we can't change the past, but we can change the present. You know,
Right.
we get a chance every day. It's a new day. We can start again. And I firmly believe that we do need almost a reboot. We need to start again.
Right.
So,
And that takes, I think, them, like, I know for me, every time that I've really grown was from a chaotic breakdown. As a friend would put it, I call it like a death of a part of me. So it's like, you know, chaos to me breaks me down enough to where I'm like, well, maybe I need to change some things, or maybe I need to look in another direction. Because if I'm looking straight at it, it might just drive me insane. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I think it's, as I say, there's so much going on, but there's a lot of positivity as well. But we seem to just be almost channeled away from that. You know, and everyone that I've spoken to, there really seems this feeling that they're constantly under attack.
Yeah.
That they're scared to say anything that might be slightly contentious. You know, because straight away, you know, someone's jumping on you and you're being accused of being this or the other, and
Yeah.
and that's dangerous because, you know, we're under a lot of stress, like I said before. But you know, we human nature, human history shows that we always grow from any adversity if we give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing now, is trying to create that opportunity, you know. So
Think about like a lot of people don't understand that everybody's got their story, and they're quick to assume that a person that's happy didn't just recently go through something really traumatic. So, or, you know what I mean, based on the way that they're actually handling the circumstance at hand, they just will take it into assumption that they're in a certain mind place, so they're, you know, their life's easy or whatever like that. And so I was really brought to thinking about that yesterday, actually. Looked on Facebook and I seen a lady that had lost her teenage daughter, and she had a picture of it posted. And but if you look in her pictures, she doesn't look distraught. And I just thought about all the people that would prejudge her that didn't know her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's beautiful. She looks sweet. You know what I mean? Like, she must have had it easy. And I was just thinking about how often people assume what or who somebody is, and then, you know, treat them however, like project their day onto them or whatever it is to get that off of their chest. They'll give it on to somebody else rather than understand they might be going through something worse than you are.
yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think that we do seem to be living in a time where everyone is judgmental. And I think part of that, look, you know, I mean, we're talking here thanks to technology, but like everything, you know, there's good and bad. And I do think that the advent of sort of the internet in particular, I think it has empowered certain people beyond the responsibility. You know, because you've got to imagine now, you know, I mean, years ago, you know, if you were in a bad mood, you would go into maybe a pub or a bar and you talk to 2 or 3 of your friends and say, I'm not happy about this, and I don't agree with this, and this is crazy. And that's it. So the 2 or 3, and that's it. You have a couple of drinks, you go back, and it's fine. You wake up the next day and you go again. If you do that now, but you do it on Facebook, you are connecting to a lot of people. And people are so sensitive now. And as you say, they're so judgmental. And I think that's one of the problems. And I think we're all still, because it's still relatively new. And we're all still trying to kind of get used to it. And I think, you know, and the history of now, just to make clear, is not a political play. It's apolitical. We're not interested in any sort of political aspirations or agendas or anything like that. But I think with politics, I think that's one of the fundamental changes, because when I was growing up back in England, you never saw politicians. You didn't really know anything about them. You know, the only time you saw them was when they needed your vote, or they needed you to go off to war. And that really was it. You know, you didn't know who they were married to. You didn't know what school or colleges their children went to, or what car they drove, or where they went on a holiday, or any of these things.
That's fascinating.
And now we know everything about the politicians. We know literally, you know, when they go to the bathroom, almost, when they're so under the microscope. And I think, unfortunately, with that, and again, this is one of the things we touched on in the history of now, is the fact that, you know, ignorance and time is bliss. And now we're looking, and what we've done, we've humanized them, because before they were up there. I mean, I remember, even if you didn't agree with a politician, you respected them because they had a higher IQ. Their intelligence was very clear in the way that they spoke, the way that they handled themselves, because that's what you saw. You know, you saw these very quick moments, but you're kind of, okay, you know. Whereas now, we know everything. And what the frightening thing now is we kind of go, you know, I can actually have a better conversation with someone in a supermarket or a bar who actually understands this better than the person who is either in power or representing a state or whatever. So there's been a real shift. So we now kind of have control in a way of what, or we certainly have an understanding of what's going on, with possibly without control. So I think now governments, politicians are kind of, they don't really know what to do. So I've seen it now where they're trying to please everyone, because they don't really know what else to do, because they're now vulnerable. They've never been vulnerable before. You know, we're kind of going, we know where you are. We know, you know, I'm not talking about, you know, trying to bring a government down, but the fact is, you know, there's cameras everywhere. I mean, when President Biden was going up the steps of the airplane and he tripped, within seconds, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on everywhere, it's on the news, it's news. But I mean, it's incredible. So I think everything now has just become so condensed that I think everyone is struggling to kind of find space to breathe. Okay, that's kind of the way I see it at the moment, which is not a good thing.
Well, I mean, even if you think about like certain restaurants, or even where I work, which I work at a rehab, it's like, if there's not structure, you see that chaos. Like you see it, because when you're trying to please people, that doesn't actually work, because there's always some type of complaint there anyway. So you can't technically even please them, because then there's a complaint from the next person, like, but why can't you please me too? Or, you know, why was this early whenever it's supposed to be at this time? Like, you just ruined my schedule. So there's always some type of conflict whenever it comes to trying to please people. But that's too where you get, like, you go to a restaurant and the food tastes like crap because the supervisor doesn't want to stand up and be like, do your job, you know.
No, it's true. I mean, it's just, you know, for me, it's this look, when you're brought up, you know, your parents are there, they love you, but they also know that sometimes they need to be cruel to be kind. They have to set those boundaries. And children that are brought up in that tend to have a better idea of how structures work. You know, you need it at work. You may not like the boss. You might not like the fact that he tells you that you have to be in at this time, and if you're 5 minutes late, he's going to dock your wages by so much or whatever. But they're there for a reason. They're there for a reason. And I kind of look at the moment, and you know, when I look at the news and when I research, because we're still always looking at the play to see if there's something else we can bring in, you know, and some of the things I read, I mean, I have to read it sort of 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 times, because I just can't believe what I'm reading. It's like, well, who made this? Who made this up? I mean, you know, one of the things in, and like I say, the play is slightly controversial, which is what I wanted to do, because otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
You know? And it is to try to get people to think. And, you know, even in my industry, I mean, you've now got this gender fluidity, which is now a big thing.
Yeah.
So even in my profession now, you know, when I'm looking to cast, that's changed now. So I'm under pressure because really, you know, when you direct, you're so into what you're doing, you know, and your mind's going off in so many different ways. And now you're thinking, well, how do I address this person? You know, and you don't want to offend anyone. And even if you do it by mistake,
Yeah.
it can be attacked. It's like, no, you know, he was disrespectful, and it's not, you know, and
Yeah.
I just think that, I think we're losing the ability of just being allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And, you know, that for me, you know, life is about, we have a right to offend and we have a right to be offended. That's human nature. That's how we learn. I mean, you made a fantastic point earlier, you know, when you were saying that you learn more from something going wrong than you ever did from a success, you know, and that's certainly true in you know, in my life. And I think that a lot of the storylines that you see in the history of now come from my experiences when I made a mistake, or I saw something, or, you know, I witnessed something that was wrong. And you kind of, as a writer, you're always bringing those in. It's like a cement mixer, you know, you throw them, you're just churning all the time, and eventually you end up with what you want. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that being the way that, because in school, like Americans in school, and so I don't know if the social structure is any different in England, and I'd love to hear the difference. I'm curious of, but I know in America in school, like you're set up for economic structure. Like you're learning this stuff in order to be productive in the economy. So it's like, you know, you constantly have this pounded in your head, and you're also pounded into your head like you make good grades, you go to college, you get a good job, you know, and stuff like that. And so people are trained up at, you know, from kindergarten up, that it's all about the concrete evidence. So you have adults running around, basically, and I was, you know, I was one of those too, that I would relate it as the conveyor belt. It was like you were on a repetition of doing and seeing things the same way, and everything was so concrete evidence. It's like, what's happening to me right now is me. And so, but nobody's really taught like how to deal with themselves, you know what I mean? And how that, you know, you go through these things not to get an F and ruin your whole life. And you know what I mean? Like you're never going to go to college now, and now you're not going to get a good career, but you make these mistakes in order to grow from them. And so a lot of people, and I think that's why depression's so rampant and relationships are so, you know, they don't last, is because we're all about what we see right now, and what we've always seen is who we actually are, rather than, you know, actually being free to like, oh, well, like I'm experiencing this right now, and I'm experiencing that right now. And then like, why am I experiencing this stuff? And so you see a lot of people that are their pain.
No, I get that. I think, look, for me, again, you know, one of the things that concerns me is that children are not allowed to be children anymore.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the basic, I mean,
agree.
children need to be children. You know, they need to create their imaginations, and, you know, technology in that as well has really damaged that. Because, you know, when I was a kid, I mean, I'm 61 now, but when I was a child, I mean, you know, we would have to use our imagination. You know, if we were playing soldiers, for instance, which was a big thing when I was a kid, you know, you would find a bit of tree bark or something, and you would pretend it was a machine gun or a rifle or whatever. And if we played football or soccer, as they say in America, you know, you would take your jumpers off and you would make goalposts and all these kind of things. So you were constantly inventing, which is a really healthy way of developing the mind. Whereas now, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think it's unbelievable, some of the things now that you can get, but it doesn't allow the child to be creative. So you've lost that part of being, certainly I would say the majority now have lost that. Then you've got this, you need to succeed, you need to be successful,
Yeah.
you know, you have to get your grades, you have to, the reality is that not everyone is going to get good grades. And the
Yeah.
reality is that, you know, even those that don't, there are many successful businessmen around today who failed at school. They left early, you know, they went, I don't want the academia, I want to come away, I want to learn by being out working, getting my hands dirty. Now there's evidence of that all over the place, but now it's this bombardment of, look, you know, if you want to have, you know, the latest phone, the latest car, you know, you need to live in a house that's this big and has 6 rooms and 4 bathrooms, and you go, that actually isn't what life's about.
Right.
But you kind of, it's very hard now to opt out. You know, when I was growing up, and I'm sure it was possibly the same in America, you know, you had dreams. It was okay to be different. It was okay to be an individual. Where now it's almost, you know, I still get it as a writer. You know, I'm not rich. I'm not, you know, I haven't made millions from it or anything, but anywhere near that. And I still have instances, which is kind of funny, where I had one recently where I was speaking to someone, and they said, "Oh, what do you do for a job?" You know, which tells you that's where it is. It's those first few questions, you know, who do you vote for? What's your politics? What do you do for a job? Where do you live? And then they kind of sort of analyze you based on that limited information, you know. But they kind of said, "What do you do for a job?" So I said, "Well, actually, I'm a writer predominantly, but I direct as well." And they said, "Oh, what do you write?" So we went through all of that, and, you know, I answered the questions as they asked them. And this went on for about 40 minutes, I would think, you know, this about, well, how do you write? You know, how do you construct this? All the rest. And at the end of it, completely, you know, like this, you know, he went, "But what do you do for a job?" I mean, that just, you know, so I made some crazy answer. But the reality is, and what's funny about this, so we live in a society now where we kind of condemn dreamers. But the reality is that everything in life, everything, right down to we call them drawing pins or paper clips or whatever, they started as somebody's dream.
Right.
And that's what we need to remember. You know, we're not all meant to be bankers and lawyers and doctors, and, you know, with full respect to all of those people that are. We also need the other people. You know, the guys that clean up the streets at night when we're tucked up in our beds. You know, the guys that go in and restock the shelves for the food that we need. You know, all those really horrible, horrible jobs as we look, but they are valuable. And we forget that, and we forget what a mess we would be. And so we should be so grateful and stop condemning people because, oh, you don't match up to what I think is what you should be. Because if we were all those jobs, the world would come to an end very, very quickly. I mean, we've seen recently with the baby formula, you know, that suddenly disappeared off the shelves. Look at the panic that it set in. We had it with COVID when, I mean, I never thought I'd ever say this sentence, but there was no toilet paper. You know, and you saw, you know, toilet paper going for ridiculous amounts of money. So I think sometimes we need to step back and go, okay, fine, yeah, okay, you've got the big house and big car, and that's wonderful. But we need to also say a big thank you to those that don't, but are still a major, major part in how this country, the infrastructure works. And I think that's really important. They're the foundation. I mean, look, when do you ever see a foundation of a house? You don't. You never go to a house and you go, what's the foundation?
That's a nice foundation.
Yeah, but you don't. But if you take the foundation away, that beautiful house falls to the ground.
Right.
And so I think that's where I would start. We talked earlier about, you know, creating change, and not just change, but positive change.
Right.
Because change, if it's not positive, doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But I think we almost have to go, do you know what? We spend too much time looking at the top, and occasionally we dip down to the middle. But I think we need to go down and actually look and actually start to say thank you and make those that are struggling, those that do these manual jobs, need to say thank you and make them feel valued, and the fact that they are an important part, and not just in some soundbite and, you know, it's like thank you and all the rest, but show them, make sure that they have the money that they can live, that they're able to enjoy holidays and family time and not feel that they almost have to apologize, when really they really are keeping the country going.
Yeah.
They're really keeping, you know, we can do without lawyers, actually. We can do without a lot. You know, lawyers come in when it goes wrong. If it doesn't go wrong, we don't really need lawyers. But the point is, we need those people doing those basic jobs, those important jobs. So, you know, it's important.
I was thinking about actually Hitler. Something that you said earlier is that, you know, I thought about how I read about how he was trying to be a painter, and it seemed like he was like really excited about, you know, this venture until he didn't fit into the box of the professor, and he got condemned for it, whenever actually art is, you know, a part of your own creativity. You know what I mean? You see some crazy artwork that's just like splashes of paint, and you're like, and they're like making all this money now. But at that time period, it was like, well, that's not good enough. You know what I mean? And it was that condemnation. And I've spoke about it a lot in the past years, is that I said, you know, all that really wasn't a lesson of there's evil in this world, but it was more so a lesson of, you know, lack of love. And so and I think about that too with the shootings. It's like, what kind of life leads up to somebody that does such horrible crimes, and how much love did they actually receive, you know what I mean, from people in general?
I mean, that's interesting because, look, you know, certainly in the United Kingdom, and again, it'll be the same here, there's always this feeling, look, marriages now are under severe pressure. Relationships, you know, seem to break up much easier than they ever did. It seems to be easy to break up rather than find a solution. I've certainly been in that position myself, and I'm guilty for that. But there was always this feeling, you know, the first thing they did, if there was, you know, like the shooting that we've just had, and there's far too many examples, the first thing is, did he come from a broken home?
Yeah.
It was the first go-to, and then that was the headline. That was the reason why he came from a broken home.
Yeah.
I think the problem is, and again, you know, coming back to sort of the history of now and this kind of immersing ourselves in looking at human behavior, I think there is an underlying frailty in our DNA. I think we have enough time through history to look at how we behave. You know, the sad thing is that we treat each other appallingly. You know, we talk about, and there's different levels. I mean, you know, we're not talking about everyone's going to go out and do these awful crimes, but even to the way that we speak to people, the way that we take people for granted. We've just spoken about it now with, you know, the kind of the jobs, you know, the kind of level of jobs that we have in society. So I think, yes, you know, it might be a lack of love, but there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of people grow up without love that don't go and do that.
Right.
You know, so it's an interesting one. So I think we have to be, you know, for me, that's right. That's the extreme, and it is absolutely extreme. And we should, we should be discussing. I think one of the problems is as well that I think people feel that having sympathy with the victims, having sympathy with their families, I don't think is enough. I think we have to empathize. We have to feel what it would be and put ourselves in that place. And most people are unwilling to do that. But I think we kind of need to. It's a little bit like, and look, this is just, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anyone else or the play. But I look at these groups that want equality, or I think the only way you'll get equality, and I'd love to see this, is where groups stand up for another group rather than their own group. Yeah. Because I think that's a great way to say, do you know what? You matter, and we're going to support you to matter. And then you're starting to really build equality. When you're making it about yourselves, and I understand there are reasons, and I get it, and I support that, you're not really going to move forward. You try walking just using one foot. It ain't going to happen. You need both. You need that. And if groups start working with other groups, you'll start to move forward, and you'll start to move forward very quickly. And the thing with governments, in my opinion, governments don't want unity. They never do, because they have nothing then to feed, or they have nothing to play off. You know, governments are not about bringing, you know, you hear this with politicians when they say we need to come together. No, they don't. That's not what it's about. And, you know, I'm not a bit, and you probably can tell, and your viewers will tell, I'm not a big fan of politics. And I never have been, because I think it's, you know, politics has never really done anything. Usually when you find a government that's made a big, you know, like the abolishment of slavery, it wasn't a government that made that decision. They were being forced from underneath. They were being lobbied, saying this is wrong. You know, and that's where people do have the power to create change. But as I say, it's got to be positive change. So look, you know, for me, there are answers out there. But I do think it's going to take individuals and groups from different areas to come together, instead of just saying we're this group here and this is what we do. We want to work with you. We want to put out this cross message, and not just condemn one type of violence by one group, but attack all, and really kind of say, no, we're not doing this anymore. You know, because we're seeing too many of these, and it is related. These mass shootings, these ridiculous. Did you see the video on Facebook? I think it was up 2 days ago. A Fox reporter was in New York, and a man walked behind with a gun and just did that behind her head, just joking. That's the level we're at now. And we're seeing more and more of that. You know, when you look, there's always been violence. We know that right the way. In biblical times, we can see, you know, you've got Cain and Abel and all these things. Which comes back to the point that I say it's a human failure, you know, frailty. But I'm seeing more and more of these. I'm seeing more of these cases, and I don't know whether it's, as you said, it's back to their childhood, to a lack of something, whether it's a lack of education, whether it's a lack of self-worth, which I do think is a major issue.
You're right.
I think people, a lot of people now are living without self-worth. They don't feel that they have value. And I think a lot of that does come from leadership. I think it comes from schools and education. I think it comes from policing. I think there needs to be a change in how the police are trained, so that they can go on the street, you know, and work more efficiently, in my opinion. Says a lot from an Englishman in America. And we have the same in England. You know, I grew up when it was the old traditional bobby, that the only thing that had was a wooden, which was called a truncheon, a wooden stick that was tucked into their belt. And, you know, if you ever watch the old films, I mean, it looks incredible, but they had a presence about them and you respected them. That's how I grew. You look at the UK police now, I mean, they're armed like they're going to war, you know, with tasers and pepper sprays and all this stuff. And it's horrible to see. You know, and I just feel that we're trying to fight fire with fire. I mean, I heard yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Donald Trump came out and said that, you know, on the back of what happened in Texas, that teachers should be armed. I think that's a terrible, for me, I think that's a terrible indictment of our society, if teachers have to go in armed. And we have to have armed guards walking around the perimeter of a school.
Well, they have them in the school districts in my area. They have the cop, and like this area, I don't even like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, I didn't lock my door last night. You know what I mean? Like I don't lock my car doors. Hopefully nobody on here knows where I live, but I don't lock my car doors, and sometimes I'll leave my wallet. So it's not a dangerous area. It's pretty low key, but they still have like the cop on duty there all day long, and then they drive around it, and so they're always there. I love that. They train the kids for what to do, like if something like that happens, stuff like that. But it is a shame that this generation, you know what I mean, they have to be taught these types of things, you know, in first grade, kindergarten.
It's a terrible indictment. And the problem with it is, how far do we go with this? I mean, when is
Right.
it going to be? I mean, when is someone going to come out and say students should be armed? And it sounds ridiculous. It sounds absolutely crazy. But everything that's happened is crazy and ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it does concern me because it's almost moving the goalpost. It's like, you know, there's a, okay, we've got a problem here. What should we do with it? Well, we'll move it 6 feet further on. Okay. And then the problem grows and you go, well, what do we do? We'll move it instead of going, okay, this is it. This is the line. We need to do something here.
Right.
You know, and again, it's an age thing. You know, I'm sort of looking back, to me, thinking when I was 14, 15, 16, to imagine that this would happen is really beyond my comprehension. I was thinking actually when I was getting ready for this, for the interview here, I was trying to think if there had been anything in the UK in terms of a school. And I really can't remember. I do know in the UK now, they do have police on grounds. Whether they're sort of all day, I'm not so sure, but certainly they will be there when the students arrive and then when the students leave. So,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, we never had anything of that when I was growing up. So you can see that the line has been pushed forward.
Yeah.
But look, there's I think, you know, crimes against anyone is appalling, but crimes against women and children is not acceptable, and it should never be acceptable. And I think that's really what I want to hear. I want to hear absolute I don't want to hear it as a political point.
Right.
I don't want to hear it by someone saying, well, you know, it's wrong, this is terrible, we need to do this and it's their fault. Leave all that out and just say, this is not acceptable, and we have to end this.
Yeah.
You know, that's it, you know.
Yeah. I think about too, like, there was a girl and she just hated this one guy, and she was like, he's an awful human being, he's this, that, the other, this, that, and, you know, words I'm not going to stay here, but then I looked at him and I seen a genuine, kind, sweet, loving person. So what I did was I relate to the girl because I worked in a prison for a little bit. Yeah, as a CNA, and I worked with inmates. And so I relate to her. I said, you know, had I worked with a murderer, I could have seen a really ugly side of him. You know what I mean? Like, I could have, if I wanted to, I could have seen a really ugly side of him, or I could have seen a genuine, caring, kind human being. So whenever I think about uniting, whenever I actually like get down to like what actually is our commonality, and that's the fact that we all go through some shit.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think if more of us would walk this earth treating people, you know, with compassion and care, and, you know, understanding that we all go through some shit, people then in turn would see that there's good people out there, and then they'd want to spread that on their journey. And so I feel like what I do and how I treat one human being today, I don't know how far that's going to travel. It could change their whole day. They could be in a good mood. They could go home to their family. You know what I mean? They could have a smile, you know, and, you know, her husband could be happy. And then, you know, so it's like, even this conversation right here, like, who knows how far it's going to travel. So a second in time could travel really far.
I think is, you know, one of the things, and I hear this all the time, that people are now starting to kind of, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make any difference. And I think that worries me, because I think, look, someone asked me some time ago, do I think that equality is possible? And I said, no, I don't think it is. I don't think you'll ever have equality. I don't think as human beings, we are able to have that. I think someone always wants to be that little bit further up the ladder, you know, so I don't think equality is possible. What I do believe is that we should never stop trying for equality. It's a little bit like world peace. Is world peace ever possible? No, I don't think so. But the problem is when we stop trying.
Right.
You have to keep trying, you know, it's so, so important. You know, when you look at the, I think it was the 21st century, it's ridiculous how long the world was just at peace. I mean, it's just, it's crazy, you know. So I think
Mhm.
that I understand what you're saying. And look, I'm the same. You know, I get up some mornings and I'm in a grumpy mood. I'm kind of like, you know, just
Yeah.
come out. And you might see someone who smiles and you don't smile back. That can affect them in such a negative way. So the opposite of that is that if you smile at someone, it can kind of make you, wow. I mean, I've had that, you know, when,
Right.
you know, you've had a bad day, you know, maybe, you know, your writing's not working or whatever, there's so many different reasons. And you just happen to catch the eye of someone who smiles at you. It's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing. I mean, how much,
Yeah.
you know, there's my parents, God bless them, they always used to tell me, and I don't know whether this is true, I should really check it out. They said it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile.
Yeah. I
Now,
heard
I
that.
don't know whether that is absolutely true, but I love the idea of that. I love the idea of that, you know, and I think that, you know, I hope with the play, that's what people get. I hope when they watch it, and
That's
it's going to be
awesome.
very interesting, is that they look at all these things and there is these moments of, wow, but I hope then they come out and go, actually, you know what? I'm lucky. Or they might say to their wife or their husband or whoever, their lover, whoever they're with, I love you.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you're in my life, because I think those things are so important. You know,
Yeah.
I was talking to someone earlier today, actually, we were saying how important a hug is. You know, it's such a charging feeling, it's energizing.
Yeah.
It's so important. I just feel those things. So I hope with the play, that comes across, that when people leave, even though the journey may be difficult, the destination, which is at the end of the place, to go out and go, actually, you know what, we're pretty lucky. It's
Yeah.
actually okay. We can get through this, because we can as human beings. We've proved it.
Right.
We always come back. We always come back stronger, wiser, sort of freer in how we think, how we behave. And then we kind of get molded back in to kind of that again, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, you know. So it's not all doom and gloom. I love life. I think life is, like I said earlier, it's the greatest gift. It's the
Yeah.
greatest gift, you know, that's just being alive, just being a part of this wonderful tapestry, this wonderful artwork. And yeah, I think we forget that sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
Yeah. I relate it once that we're kind of like a canvas.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of like a painting on a canvas, and so people can look at it in many different ways, shapes, or forms, you know what I mean? And so it is like we really are spectacular, and it's like the things that we go through in life, they play a big part of
Mm-hmm.
that beauty, and it's what sets us apart, and it's what gives us that gift to give to others as well. So it's like whatever we may go through, that's our purpose, to help one another out.
That is exactly what it is. That is
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And that's what I was saying earlier, because it's not just on an individual basis, but that's also on a group basis.
Yeah.
You help each other, you stand up for each other, you know, rather than look, this is about me or it's about it. It's how can I kind of support this person, you know?
Yeah.
No, I like that. That's a very, very good way of looking at it. You know,
Thank you.
it's well, I mean, look, it's life is what it is. You know, I've lived most of my life now. You know, I'm kind of, but I have my health, which I'm grateful for, because that's a big part of life. And you know, but yeah, I mean, it's such an important opportunity to grow and help others grow around you. You know, and
Right.
it wouldn't. The ironic thing is, you know, earlier I was not being negative, but I was just being honest. But it actually wouldn't take much to turn things around.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't. You know, when you have these highly educated men and women who are in these seats of power, but actually, you know, you look at, I always point to the facts of, you know, poverty, you look at homelessness, you look at hunger, they're actually so easily resolved. They're so easily resolved. You know, so it's an unwillingness to make that change, that positive change. Nobody should starve today. There's no reason for anyone starving. There is no reason for anyone being homeless. The infrastructure is there, so it's a choice. And, you know, we know that in America and certainly in the UK, we know that there's been a big events in cities, London being one when we had the Olympics, where vans went round under instruction and collected the homeless and threw them out the city so that the city looked cleaner. Now that is, you know, we talk about crimes against humanity. That is your government that you voted in. That's a government, that is a crime against humanity, to pick a human being up and to take them outside of the boundaries of the city because you want the city to look good. I'm sorry, that's, you know, now if more people spoke up, because we all know, I mean, we walk around the cities, you know, you see people on the streets, you can see them, they're visible, it's not hard to find. You know, now if more people spoke and said, no, this isn't right, you know, we need to get these people off the streets, we need to support them, we need to make sure they've got food. You know? And there are organizations that do a fantastic job, like Shelter and the Salvation Army and organizations like that. But they shouldn't really have to carry the responsibility of that. You know, there are, I mean, how many times do you walk around and you see empty properties or warehouses or things that are empty? You know, you could change this, and we have a responsibility not just to ourselves but to everyone else in the world. You know, just, you know, and I think that's something that I feel very, very strongly about. And again, I keep coming back to the history of now because that's what I'm doing, but that's what's in there. It's making people realize and just say, you know, because, you know, when you look, so for instance, if you look at the play, if you look at the Holocaust and you go, that's terrible, it's awful. And I think most people, I'd be very concerned if someone didn't think it was awful and it wasn't atrocious and it wasn't. So when you look at that, you will hear people say, it's terrible, shouldn't happen, it's awful. But then they'll walk out of the theatre and they'll pass someone on the streets, or they'll see something in the newspaper and they won't do anything. So it's kind of, it's an interesting that we can look at the past and go, no, that shouldn't have happened. And then you go, well, okay, well, it's still kind of happening now. And like I said before, it's not history that repeats itself, in my opinion, but it's human behavior. So if you're disgusted by what happened in the past, if you truly are disgusted, then do something about it in the present. We all have a voice, you know, and it's not a case of thinking, well, nobody's going to listen, I can't make a difference. You actually can. You
can, because the next person, the person that you're helping is going to spread that message forth. So it keeps traveling. It really does.
It's important. It's something very, very important, in my opinion. And I think it's, look, you know, if we think looking to our governments, if we're thinking looking to our leaders are going to create a better world, we're kidding ourselves. That's not going to happen. We kind of have to become our own governments. We set our own mandates, and we kind of go, you know what, today, if I pass someone on the street and I'm able to, I'm not saying do things that's going to put your life in jeopardy or your families, but if you're able to, do something. Just do something. You know, it's so simple. And I know that anyone that watches or listens to this, I can hear them going, he's a dreamer. He's a dreamer. And they're absolutely right. I am a dreamer. And like I said earlier, everything that we have in life now, the comfy chairs we sit in, the beds that we sleep in, the heating that keeps us warm in the winter, they started as somebody sat with probably a piece of paper and a pencil. I've got an idea.
And people thought it was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you can imagine, I mean, you know, can you imagine that, you know, the conversation was, I've got an idea, I'm going to build a machine that we can fly.
Yeah,
I mean,
they thought that they were crazy.
I mean, look, for me, Andrea, I would love, you know, people sometimes say, you know, if you can meet anyone, what would you be? I would just love to have a day going around and listening to that first conversation when someone, you know, they say, oh, you know, I've got this idea. What's this idea? I'm going to create a wheel. What's a wheel? You know, what shape is it? How is it going to work? You know, I'm going to create the flame. Look at the internet.
Yeah.
Look at what the internet has brought, the internet has changed the world more than any other invention.
Yeah.
But it started with one person who went,
Right.
can you imagine the grief he went through, the laughter, the ridicule of what?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you talking about? You know, the
Yeah.
telephone and stuff like this. I mean, it's incredible.
Albert
Yeah,
Einstein, they called
yeah,
him an idiot. Harold Ford, they
yeah.
called him an idiot because
Always do.
it took him like 700 tries or something like that.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
mean, they all have this story of somebody at some point in time calling him an idiot because I mean,
yeah.
you're using candles, you know, and somebody's like, oh no, we're gonna make a light.
Mm.
And everybody in the room's like, you're nuts. You know what I mean? Rather than
Yeah.
seeing that this could actually be a thing.
Well,
It's
world
beautifully
peace, getting
related.
rid of poverty, getting rid of homelessness is exactly the same as inventing electricity or inventing the car or the aeroplane. It just takes enough people to believe in it and make it happen. And it can happen, you know, and it's, you know, you look, you know, in the UK, I mean, around the world, you hear most people talk about the National Health Service, how amazing it is. You know, it's one of the best in the world because it's paid for, it's free. You know, you don't have to go and pay for medical care. But if you go back and study it, I mean, doctors were almost arrested for going out and treating patients that had no money, that were poor in these poor houses. You know, I mean, it's again, it's someone who kind of went, you know what, I believe in this. I believe in this. And now we look back and you go, well, okay, obviously, you know, and it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, if in 100 years, you know, somebody's whatever going on then, I don't know. But they kind of research and they go, do you know 100 years ago in 2022, there were people that lived on the streets that didn't have enough food? I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds crazy, but it can change. And those things are important to me. And the play that I've written, I've been working on it for 17 years.
Wow.
It's because I believe in it. I think there is a message in there. And I just
Yeah.
hope that it just makes people feel happy about who they are and where they are. And then they want to share a part of that they want to make a difference within their community, within their street. I'm not saying that they have to send money thousands of miles away. That's great if they do. But, you know, you can start a ripple effect that eventually will reach those parts. But start in your own home, start with your neighbor, and it grows. It
Right.
grows and it can happen. And we've seen, you know, you go back to the 50s and 60s, certainly in this country, with the civil rights movement, you know, with equality for women, you know, same in the UK. So those things can happen. We
Yeah.
have evidence that the people can make a difference. And it
Right.
doesn't have to be through violence, because I don't condone that at all.
No.
But you can just by coming together. And we've kind of seen it recently. You saw it with George Floyd. When that happened, you saw the outpouring, and you saw it in other countries. So I think
Yeah, it was the whole world. Yeah.
it was wonderful. I mean, it was
Yeah.
look, I didn't like the violence. I didn't, you know, I was
Right.
in North Carolina at the time, and I saw shops and bars, you know, smash the windows, smash. That's when you lose the argument. But
Yeah.
the world coming together and saying, you know what,
Yeah, it was the whole world.
we've had enough. We're not accepting this. So
Yeah.
I think there is enough people out there. There needs to be that kind of emphasis, not just on one terrible event, which it was, you know, but we're not going to wait for a terrible event. We're actually going to
Right.
start working on it now. And
Right.
again, it's about speaking up for somebody else rather than yourself, because that won't get you anywhere.
Right.
Just get people looking at you saying, well, it's about you. And we've seen that in the last year, 18 months. But if you start saying, well, actually, I'm sticking up for this group here or this individual, it's very, very hard then to be attacked.
Right.
Very, very hard. So you know, that's kind of one of the things that I kind of want to engage with this play and sort of work it into maybe education and community. So, you know, it can be broken up and used in that way. So who knows? Hopefully. I hope so.
I think a lot of people did like bypass that whole thing and understanding what actually like Floyd's life really did have a huge impact on the world in unity. Like I'm glad that you brought that up because people really did miss that. I think a lot of people did. There's people that saw it too, but a lot of people didn't notice that it was like something that really united, you know, everybody on this commonality of like, this can't be a thing.
No, it can't. It's unacceptable. And I
Yeah.
think that commonality, which is something I've talked about before, you know, we talk about differences. Look, there's nothing wrong with having differences between certain groups, and difference should be celebrated.
Right.
It's
Amen.
fantastic. You know, it should be
Mhm.
celebrated.
Yeah.
But there are more commonalities than there are differences. We are all the same. You know, if you get beyond those what I call artificial barriers, you know, we're the same. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. We want to be happy. You know, we want our children to be happy. We want them to be safe. You know, they're things that are not specific to a group. They're for all of us, you know. So when you get beyond those divides, and that's something else which I see, is that the world is becoming divided. We're talking about equality, and we're talking about you know, we should all be of the same and this, but I actually see it strangely going the other way. Groups are splintering.
Yeah.
You know, there's real division that's starting to kind of appear. But look, you know, it's those commonalities which are really, really important. And the commonalities are there. And that's one of the threads that the play touches on, which is, you know, we use Christina, as I say, you know, the two ends of her life. We see this young girl who's 13, 14. She's a complete dreamer. She walks around with her head in the book all the time. She's annoyance to her mother. Her father thinks she's the most wonderful thing ever. And so she plays up to that. Well, if I said to you, okay, we have a girl who's 13, 14, and she's annoyance to her mother, who wants her to sort of settle down and be more kind of supportive in the house and learn to grow up to be a young woman and blah, blah, blah. But she's very close to her father and whatever. You can apply that to any period in history.
Yeah.
How many girls, how many families are going through that now? As the girl's starting to go from being a young girl into a young woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would imagine anyone who's had a daughter will go, yeah, I went through that.
Yeah.
I understand that. Well, that's what we're saying. So a lot of things that happen then, because we stay in a period of history. So whenever we judge, for instance, if we judge Germany in the 1930s, we now judge it through Nazis. That's all we see. But there was real lives. There was commonalities. There was families that worked together and played together, just the same as we do now. So we tend to kind of like condense it down to, oh, it must have been a terrible time. You know, we've just had COVID for 2.5 years, but people still got together in that time. There were still things, babies were born, lives were started. I know there's all the negative, and it was horrible, and God forbid we ever have to go through that again. But there was still life that grew out of that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, really important to sort of understand that.
Right.
So, you know, I would imagine in 100 years time or 50 years time or whenever, when anyone studies the COVID era, they will just say, oh, it was terrible. And what you need to do is go, well, actually it was, but you know what? This also happened. You know, I think that obviously with workplaces being closed, families had more time together than they've probably had in the last 50 years.
It slowed life down. Yeah.
It did. And people was like, wow, you know, you're my wife. You know, usually I only see you for like maybe half an hour in a night because, you know, you with the kids, maybe you've got whatever, you know, I'm not making gender roles here, but you know what I'm saying. And suddenly it was like, well, we've got all day.
Yeah.
You know, we can't go anywhere really because everywhere's pretty much closed.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can put a mask on and go for a walk in a park together. Or so I think there was some positivity there, and I think families kind of grew closer. Some families probably realized that they didn't really have anything in common anymore, which can also happen. So I think out of any sort of and we talked about it earlier, anything that goes wrong, any negative, there's always positivity that comes out of it if we allow it to.
Right.
So, you know,
I read that book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I'm not sure if you've
Okay.
ever read that book. Yeah. And I cried for like the first 36 pages, and I'm pretty like strong emotionally. I don't cry very often. I'm not a crying female, but
Sure.
I cried for like the first 36 pages because I really thought about, you know, all the things, like if a bus come pulling up to my house right now and said, give me your clothes, give me all your belongings, I'm taking your family, like you're not going to see your house anymore, and you know everything that you worked for your whole life is now gone, and you're just a naked human with nothing. I'm stripping it all away from you. And what I got to thinking about was all the things, like while I'd be on that bus, all the things that I would have took for granted in that day in my life, the things even that I hated, you know what I mean? And so I don't know, that really put a lot of things in perspective for me, is that, you know, it could always be worse, but at the same time, it could always be worse than what I'm going through right now. But at the same time, it's like I could at least have gratitude for, you know, the things that I do have. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're all, no matter how bad our lives are, we always have got things to say thank you for. And I think that's a grounding experience for anyone who does that. That just, you know, we may not have everything we want, you know.
Right.
We always want, you know, whatever car we drive or whatever house, we're always kind of like, oh, maybe I want this house instead, or I want this car or whatever. But, you know, I think that the basics are so important, just to say, you know, I'm lucky. You know, I was years, not that long ago, actually, I was homeless for a while. Actually, you know, my life kind of went out of
Incredible.
control and I ended up on the streets. You know, the one thing that really hit me was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning when I needed the bathroom. And I'd always had a bathroom. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're looking at, you know, I was there, I had a couple of bags with me. I still had, as daft as it sounds being on the streets, but I had my laptop because I still wanted to work. I felt I could still work my way out of that situation. And it was cold, it was uncomfortable, but none of that bothered me. But then when I needed the bathroom,
Yeah.
that's when I suddenly went, wow. I mean, it's just, you know, so I think, you know, when I talk about being grateful, I mean, we just take that for granted. You know, if we want to drink a water, we go to the tap and there's water there for us. And, you know, and I think we tend to forget just how lucky we are with those things.
Yeah.
You know, so that was, it was a harsh experience, but it was one that I'm actually grateful for, because I think it kind of brought me back to a sense of reality of
Yeah.
where my life was. And look, you know, I'm not someone that's going to say that, you know, life treated me harsh. I made bad mistakes, and I'm if not totally responsible, certainly a large part of what happened was down to mistakes that I've made, you know, bad choices. But it was an interesting experience, in as much as I say it made me realize. So now I don't take anything for granted. I really don't.
Right.
You know, I'm sat here now because my throat gets dry. So with 2 glasses of water, you know, before that, it's just water. No,
Right.
I'm lucky to have 2 glasses of water. I'm lucky to be able to walk a short distance and just, you know, have access to clean water. So, you know, I think those kind of things are really important. And I think especially now, you know, because we're all sort of feeling negative, we're feeling a little bit kind of under pressure. And I think just actually, you know what, I'm lucky because, you know, I have
Yeah.
my health, or I have my family, or I have a job, or like I say, as different as if I need to use the bathroom, I have a bathroom.
Right.
You know, and we kind of dismiss those as, well, of course I do. Like it's a right,
Right.
it's not a right. It's not a
Right.
right.
No.
You know, it's something that, you know, we're kind of lucky to have. So,
Right. And it gives you, yeah, like you said, it gives you a greater sense of gratitude, and it's beautiful hearing stories like that, you know, because it does inspire other people to like take a look at, you know, their lives and the way they're actually viewing things from, you know, people that experience those hardships. It's
well, I
really
think,
beautiful. I thank you for sharing.
no, it's, look, I mean, I think it's important. I think the trouble is nowadays that we have so many people, and celebrities are probably the worst for this, you know, that we have their lives thrust in our faces, you know, these incredible parties and the cars they drive and these multi-million-dollar contracts they get for acting. It's difficult, you know. So I think, you know, for me, part of what I want to do, part of what I do is to say to people, look, you know, this is me. I've messed up big time. I really messed up big time. But you know what, you can work your way through it, and I'm still working my way through it. And now, you know, ironic, you know, crazily now I'm sort of, you know, I have a fantastic production manager who's done an amazing job. You know, we're looking at a tour next year. We're looking at going down to Texas and going down to North Carolina and in New York. And I'm kind of, you know, and I'm still that guy that was sat on the bench at 3 a.m. that wanted a bathroom. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, wow, you know, so I want people to know, you know, I want people to look at me or listen to me and go, oh, okay, yeah, he's got all this. No, you know, I hit rock bottom, and anyone can hit rock bottom, but that also means that anyone can be successful in however they define success.
Right. That's
So,
so
you know,
beautiful.
so I want to kind of, look, I'm an average guy. You know, I was brought up, wonderful parents. I was brought up in a working class background in England. So I'm certainly nothing special. And, you know, that's certainly not what I want to come across as. But I'm a human being, and we talked earlier, you know, when I said frailties, it's not me talking from an ivory tower saying these people are this. I have those frailties. And I think that we have a challenge every day to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we had a good day yesterday doesn't mean we can take the day off. We have to then the next day we start again. I want to be the best version of myself. And if we make a mistake, be big enough to look in the mirror and say, you let yourself down. And therefore, if you've let yourself down, you will have let other people down. You need to put that right. So, you know, when I talk about becoming our own governments, our own mandates, that's what I'm talking about. We can't always blame the government. We can't always blame this.
Right.
We also have to look at it and say, well, what part in that did I play?
Right.
And then the government isn't going to come to your house and fix it for you. Let's be told.
Right.
But we can do it ourselves. And it may not be something you can do over a day or a week or a month or maybe even a year, but you can do it if you just keep trying. And again, if you've got a network of people in a community or in a city that you can go to that are there, that support mechanism, it can work. It can work. So that's what I'm talking. That's really, again, you know, with the play, but also my philosophy on life, that it really is, life is about how we work with others. It's not really what we do with ourselves, but it's how we relate to others. And, you know, it's, as I said, I'm sure that whoever listens to this will label me a dreamer. And if that's true, I'm very proud of that. I want to be a dreamer.
Well, this is our daydream.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I noticed. And yeah, I mean, it's dreams are so important. They're a part of the way we think, the way we act, you know, and I think we need to embrace those dreams and embrace those that are brave enough to have those dreams, you know, and not try to crush them and then sort of say, and then when it becomes a big success, sort of joining, go, well, I knew, I've always been there, you know, I'm part of this success. And you kind of, you know, and I think young people need just a little bit of pressure taken off them. And just, it's okay to be a kid. It's okay to make a mistake. And there is time that we can talk about your career or your job opportunities or where you enter sort of the adult world. You don't have to enter at the top. you can work your way up. You don't have to get
Right.
a degree. You know, there's so many different options. And then I think, you know, I don't know what happened in Texas. I don't know. I've read a lot of the news that's coming out. What he did was terrible, and I don't condone it. And this is going to be contentious, but I'm going to say it. I don't care. He was an 18-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And it concerns me.
Yeah. It's sad.
That an 18-year-old boy
He's
did
just
that.
a child himself. Yeah.
It just, you know, so I'm not condoning it. I'm not, but I'm saying this is an 18. I saw his mother. I don't know if you saw the interview. She came out crying.
Mm-mm.
And she said, please, he's my son. He wasn't a bad person. I mean, you know, I think we have to remember there as well what she's going through, how she must feel. So, you know, again, you know, it's, you know, I guess it's a contentious point. I don't know. But for me, we don't, you made a fantastic point earlier when we don't really know. We just look at the label almost, because we're all labeled. We're all told what we are. But if you take away the label and actually spend time, you'll probably find that actually there's someone there who's crying out for help, that somebody needs some attention. You know, one of the ways I got into writing was that I was bullied at school, severely bullied at school, to the point that I had a knife pulled to my throat. I mean, it was really, you know, in sort of the UK at the time, it was just, but the thing about being bullied is that somehow the bully tends to transfer onto you the feeling of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
So it's not just the fact that you're being attacked. It's not just the fact that you are being made to fear for your life, your existence. It's the fact that you almost feel like it's your fault.
Yeah.
So therefore, for me, I could never talk to anyone. I couldn't speak to my parents because I thought I'd let them down.
Right.
And that's where I started writing. That's where that's really where my and I think it's a gift. I think anyone who has a, you know, painters and write, I think it's a gift. I think it's a heavenly gift for me. But we don't always find those gifts in ourselves. But I think that's where I started writing. And you look at this young man, I don't know what's gone on in his life, but he didn't find something to release whatever was going on with him. And now we've got this awful situation where all these families have lost loved ones, children, you know, the teachers that were killed. So again, I think sometimes we need to look at things and challenge those things, even though they're difficult.
I think the school districts, like, you have children going to school the same amount of time that adult goes to work for a full-time job. And then you send them home with a bunch of homework. And so we wonder why our adults now, you know, because they were doing that whenever I was in school, are go, 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 go. And we don't even feel like we have enough time to see our family members and stuff like that. But at the same time, when you look at the statistics for how many people in the United States have anxiety or taking anxiety medications or depression medication, they might want to take a deeper look into all these self-developmental tools that we have out there for, you know, learning how to cope with your emotions, learning how to cope with situations around you, and, you know, really incorporating, you know, the positive aspects of mental health and how to deal with your emotions and listening skills and communication skills and things like that. And actually teaching kids how to grow up and be effective human beings, not just social economic structures. Because a lot of times, especially in this day and age, because I imagine this all is going to get a lot worse. This day and age, you have kids, like whenever I was young, relationships lasted. You know, nowadays it's like my daughter goes to school, like one person she knows in her whole class has their parents still together. Like it's not even it doesn't even come close to even being equal. Like there's more split homes than there is not. And so the kids aren't necessarily learning, you know, these structures at home. Parents are exhausted, they're worn out. A lot of people are working 2 jobs, you know, and things like that. So the school really needs to step up and teach us, you know, these skills in order to be effective human beings.
Yeah, do you know, I think the first thing, I agree with all of that, but you know, the first thing that has to be done is remove the stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
This feeling that you should be ashamed,
Yeah.
you're dangerous because you're mental health, you have mental
Right.
health issues. Because I would think that most people have some form of mental health issues, and mental
I
health,
think
unfortunately for
everybody
me,
does.
I
think we
agree.
all do. I think we
But
could all go in and get anxiety medication right now today.
oh, absolutely, but I think the problem is that mental health is too much of a wide term.
Yeah.
It's too much. You know, you can, you know, we talk about depression, but I think removing that stigma, making people, you know, if you've broken your arm, you don't hide your broken arm away. It's like, well, I've broken my arm. It's that. Mental health is no different to that. It's a
Right.
part of the body that's just, it's broken.
Right.
You know, it's something that needs looking at and
Attended
treating,
to.
and
Yeah.
but no, I agree. And I think this is, you know, again, we talk about young people, you know, it's the most wonderful time of your life, because
Right.
you shouldn't really have anything to worry about. That's what your parents are there for. And
Right.
again, you know, I agree with you in terms of, you know, the family unit. You know, again,
Yeah.
when I grew up, like I said, you know, we weren't rich by any means. We were a working class family, but a lot of the time my father would go to work and that wage would be enough. So my mother was always at home. And even
Right.
when she got a part-time job, she worked it around so that as a family unit, we would sit, so there'd be my mother, my father, my brother and myself. And every meal we would sit as a family. So we would have breakfast together in the morning and we'd have dinner, as we call it, at night. And that was really important. That's when we talked as a family. And then,
Yeah.
you know, certainly when I was younger, we would sit and watch television for maybe an hour or something like that. And then obviously as you get older, you start to break away a little bit.
Right.
But I think the family unit is another thing that really needs to be looked at, that breakdown, that sort of communication.
Yeah.
Because young people need that. And I think they probably need it more now than ever, because, you know, we all have this, you know, and I'm as guilty as anyone else. We carry our phones, you know, I have a, you know, so the world is in my hand or my back pocket all the time. So, you know, when I was growing up and when you were growing up, when you were in the house, you were protected. You were home, your parents go, right, okay, we're fine.
Right.
We know where the kids are. Now you're getting messages through. We know the cyberbullying. We know, again,
Yeah.
that's another area that's now grown out of this.
Yeah.
You know, the internet, this World Wide Web, this incredible new phenomenon that's coming into our lives. So, you know, all of these things are factors. So I think our young people really need more support.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
real.
more and more support. And, you know,
Yeah.
it's difficult. It's difficult. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we can only keep trying. We can only keep sort of conversations like this. Hopefully, you know, when they listen to this, it might make a difference. They might think,
Right.
actually, you know what? That's what
Yeah.
we're doing it for. That's what it's
Yeah.
about. I mean, this is,
Mhm.
you've got a great channel here. This is what you're doing.
Thank you so
You
much.
know, you're bringing this, you know, these conversations out there, and hopefully people are listening and learning, and maybe just, even if they don't agree what's said, if it just makes them think,
Yeah.
that's really what I think is important. Just people just to find that little, there's John Cleese is this fantastic, I'm sure you know him from Monty Python and stuff. But if not, anyway, he's a Brit, doesn't matter, he'll forgive you. He's a writer, an actor, comedian, but he's very knowledgeable, he's very well read, and he talks all the time, and he talks about creativity. And he says that creativity comes out of time to think. In fact, you mentioned Einstein earlier, and there's this lovely image that people describe Einstein, that he used to sit with his feet upon the desk, staring into space. And he would do that for hours. And people, you know, they were sort of looking at him, he's not doing anything.
It's
He was
so
working.
awesome.
He was working. He created that time, and creativity comes from space. It comes from that time. It comes from disengaging with everything else and giving yourself that time to sort of like, develop ideas or let ideas flow. And I think outside of creativity, even in our normal lives, we need just those moments when we just sit and disengage with everything and just think and just kind of maybe realign ourselves and go, okay, I need to do this differently. So yeah, I think it's, I think we all probably need constant sort of just moments just to rethink what we're doing and who we are and what part we play. Because I think we all have a major, major role. I think we're all, I think it was Shakespeare that came out and said the world's a stage. And he's basically right. And we all have lead roles. We're not supporting cast. We're not day players. We are all lead. We all have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we only hear about the negatives, as we've just done, as I say. It's global.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world now knows who this guy is.
Yeah.
He was a nobody in terms of, from the global reference point. Now he is.
Yeah.
Well, we can do that on a positive basis as well.
Right.
We can do that, and I think that's kind of the message that I really want to get out there. That it's not just a negative. And I think newspapers should also get away from celebrities and all this and maybe start showing some of the positivity that happens in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be someone who's rich and famous and da-da-da. It can just be an ordinary person down the street who does something remarkable. Make it a headline. Make it front page news. Don't just put it down in some condescending little column that we miss. Make it big news.
Yeah.
Let people know there's positivity. Newspaper, news can be good and bad. I don't know where someone got the idea it all has to be bad.
Yeah.
Let's have some good news. Let's have some positivity.
Right.
And let's have it right on that first headline. You imagine picking up a newspaper, because usually we all do it. You get that first and you're just like, oh. And as you go down, you get about halfway and then your head's gone. It'd be great to pick it up and go, wow, fantastic.
Yeah. I tried that with my local newspaper and they shot it down.
Yeah. Yeah, they will. They will.
I tried it.
No, it's crazy. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Does that tell us something about human beings that we're more comfortable reading bad news? Is that something? I mean, there's all these human elements that we can kind of like explore. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, is that where we are, that we're more comfortable, with our cup of coffee in the morning and slice of toast with some bad news because we go, yeah, that's how you start your day.
Right.
I mean, I'd much rather have someone smiling. That first picture you see is someone smiling, not a celebrity, but someone who's from my part of the world, someone who works hard, who just pays the bills and has enough for maybe the odd holiday or something. And you think, wow, rather than look at someone, either it's bad news or, I don't know, some celebrities just bought another mansion for $68.5 million because they've just taken on a new film or something. And you go, why would you want to read that? I mean, it instantly, it must have a negative impact, You kind of, you get up from your chair and you look at your house and you kind of go, okay. And then you go to work. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe we've touched on something.
Yeah, I hope so. So I appreciate you so much for taking the time, and
I've loved it. It's been great.
Yeah, it was such a blessing, and I gained much from talking to you as well.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to share out the website in the description down below. And if anybody wants to donate to help in this cause and, spreading the positivity, there's a link on the website to do so. So.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So you have an awesome rest of your night. Thank you for blessing me.
Stay safe. Okay.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.